Today we're doing section 1.2. It's all about the order of operations. The first thing we're going to talk about today is the different parts of an expression. So here's an expression, negative 3x squared minus 5x plus 7. The terms of an expression are the parts that are separated by plus and minus signs. If it is negative, you keep the negative with the term. So this term is technically negative 3x squared. This is negative 5x squared. And this term is a 7. You don't need to worry about the plus signs. They're just the way that the terms are broken up. In this example, all the terms are circled. Any questions? All right, next we're going to look at what it means to be a coefficient. In this example, the coefficients will be underlined. Coefficients work with the variables. So a number being multiplied by a variable is a coefficient. Anytime you see the letters C and O at the beginning of the word, it implies that two things are working together, like cooperate or co-worker. Same thing here. Coefficient is a number that works with a variable. And like I said, they're underlined here, so our coefficients are negative 3 and negative 5. And the last thing we're going to look at in this expression is the constant. The constant here is shown in a box. It is 7. A constant is a term without a variable. So we call it a constant because it never changes. No matter what you plug in for x, the constant is always 7. The value of x does not determine the value of the constant. Any questions on this? All right, the next thing we're going to look at is the order of operations. I'm sure this will sound very familiar to most of you. Whenever you're simplifying an expression, the first thing you want to do is anything in a grouping symbol. So a parentheses, or if you see brackets or braces, you want to do those first. If there's more than one grouping symbol, you start with the innermost grouping symbol and work your way out. Once you take care of all of those, start working on your exponents. After that, you're going to multiply and divide at the same time from left to right. And finally, add, subtract, same time from left to right. I'm sure you guys have seen this many times before, but it's extremely important. Luckily for you guys, you can use a calculator in here if the order of operations is not really your thing. As long as you're entering it correctly into the calculator with the right parentheses, it can actually handle it all for you. A lot of people like to use the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally trick for this. It's a great thing to help you. I just caution you if you're going to use that. P stands for parentheses. Of course, we just talked about there are other grouping symbols besides parentheses, so be aware of that. Saying my dear Aunt Sally kind of implies that M comes before D, which means multiply would come before divide. You can see on the board that's actually not true. We do those at the same time from left to right. Same thing for addition and subtraction, just work left to right. All right, where would I start? The exponent, good. Normally we look for grouping symbols first, no grouping symbols here. So we're going to do the exponent. What is 4 squared? 16, good. Now what? Which is? 2, good. And the next one? Good, 2 times 2, so that turns into a 4. 5 minus 4 is? 1, and 1 plus 3 is? 4. Here's our next example. Anytime you see a rational expression like this and you're doing the order of operations, you need to concentrate on simplifying the top, then simplifying the bottom, and then simplifying the whole rational expression. So it's kind of like an invisible grouping symbol telling you to do the top first. What would we get on the top? 8. The answer is 4. Wonderful. What are your questions? Where should I start on the third example? Good. We're going to start with our exponents inside the grouping symbol. 3 squared is 9. Next. Subtract the parentheses. You get 1. Next. Good. And last. 4. Good. Anyone know where I'm going to start on this one? Very good. Exponent. So 9 squared would turn into 81. Then what? Which is 27. Good. After that, which is next 60. Good. Just addition. And our final answer is 6. Wonderful. Any questions? For example 5, we are going to need to use one of the properties we talked about yesterday. Anyone know which one? Distribute, the distributive property. Wonderful. So that means I'm going to multiply the first set of parentheses by a 5, the second one by negative 3/4. Can anyone tell me what I get in the first set? Thank you. Everyone sort of mumbled the answer, but I got it. In the back set of parentheses. Good. I get minus 6 plus, like that? P. Good. Don't forget your P. Why didn't I do parentheses first? I thought order of operations says grouping symbols. Why didn't I do that?
30 minus 7p.
Why can't you do 30 minus 7p?
Because it has a variable.
Good. One has a variable, one doesn't. That means they're not like terms. Very good use of the math language. What would I do next? Simplify. What does that mean? Combine like terms. Good. So anything with a P is going to go together. Any constant will go together. Usually we put variables in the front, so let's do our P's first. What would I get? Negative 23p. What about for my constant? Plus 144. Great. If you did 144 minus 23p, I would take that as well. What are your questions? All right, for example 6, the directions say simplify and answer the questions below. How do I simplify something like that? Put the like terms together. Good. And there's always a special order we like to use. Does anyone remember what it is?
3, 2, 1.
Good. You go from biggest exponent to littlest exponent. We call it descending order. So I want anything with an x to the third to be in the front. Looks like there's only one term with an x to the third, so we're going to keep it. What would I write next?
Minus 3x squared.
Very good. Minus 3x squared. Next.
Plus 5.
Good. Plus 5x. Plus 7. Wonderful. Any questions on how we got that? How many terms are there? 4. What's the coefficient of the second term? This is the second term, right? What's a coefficient?
-3.
Yeah, a coefficient is the number being multiplied by the variable, so you don't want to include the x squared in there. That's the variable. The coefficient is the -3. The lead coefficient, what do you guys think that is? Good. Pretty self-explanatory. Lead is the one in the front. Coefficient, number with the variable. And the constant? 7. Wonderful. What are your questions? For example 7, it says evaluate. What does that mean?
Solve.
Solve. When we solve, we usually find out what the variable equals, but here they already told us what the variable equals. So what's evaluate? Yeah, plug it in. So everywhere I see a C, I'm going to put a 3. Everywhere I see a D, I'm going to put a -5. And I always put them in parentheses. It kind of helps me keep my signs straight and my operations straight so I know I'm multiplying. Now what?
3 squared.
3 squared, good. Good old order of operations. What is 3 squared? 9, wonderful. Next we would multiply. You can actually multiply the 9, the 3, and the -5 all at once. What would you get? 135. Minus, we can do this one at the same time. 36. Giving me a final answer of? 171. What are your questions on this? Okay, take a look at these. Some of these will be positive, some of them will be negative. It is your job to figure out which one's which. A key here is to look at where the parentheses are. So on A, is the negative part of the base that's with the exponent of 7? Is this negative sign to the 7th power? It is not. Forget about it. Deal with the 2 to the 7th and then make it negative. So is your answer going to be negative or positive? Negative. You're going to deal with it at the end. Good. Let's take a look at B. Is this negative to the 4th power?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. So what will the sign of this answer be? Positive. Wonderful. Part C, is this negative to the 5th power? It is. How many negatives will we have, though? A total of 5. Will that give us a positive answer or a negative answer? Negative. Good. Last one, D. Is that negative to the 5th power? No. If it was in parentheses, it'd be -4 times -4 times -4 times -4 times -4. But in this case, it's just 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Then we want to make it negative. So what's my answer? It's going to be a negative. Good. Actually, on that one, either way, it would have been negative. But it's still nice to look at. You might notice a pattern. If it's in parentheses, if your exponent is an even number, you'll end up with a positive answer. If it's an odd number, you'll end up with a negative answer. If it's out front, it's going to be negative either way. What are your questions on these? All right, next we're going to look at a trapezoid. You guys probably saw a lot of these in geometry, I assume. This one's pretty straightforward. We're going to use the area formula. If you don't have it memorized, it's right there. So using that picture, we're going to plug in what we know. So the area is 1/2 the height. What's our height? X. We don't know the height. What's our first base? W. What's our second base? A. If you had the W and the A flip-flopped, would that be okay? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. If you left your answer like that, I would be completely fine. If you want to get rid of those parentheses by distributing, that works too. Both of those answers are acceptable in my eyes. What are your questions on this one? So we are supposed to write an expression. Technically, we're going to write an equation. We're going to have an equal sign in there. To determine the total salary if a teacher's starting salary was 30 grand and the salary increased $2,500 per year. Anyone have an idea? let's start defining some variables. That would be helpful. Let's use an S. S is going to represent the salary. Good. Any other variable we want to define? The year. Maybe a Y. Works for me. So Y is going to be the number of years. And we're writing an expression or equation to model the salary. So I'm going to start with salary equals what? 30,000. That's it.
Plus 2,500.
Very good. Wonderful. If you want to write this in slope-intercept form, you could do S equals, put the Y term in front, 2,500 Y plus 30,000. If you want to leave it like this, perfectly fine with me. Any questions on this? I will tell you, anytime you write something like this to model a problem, I need to see what your variables stand for. Okay? And if you're going to do something like the Y especially, if you say Y equals years, that's misleading because the year right now is 2014 and you wouldn't plug 2014 in here, so make sure you say number of years. All right, here's your homework. It's written on your green sheet, but in case you lost track of that. Again, these are all odds, so the answers will be in the back of the book.